Hey there, and welcome to the final lesson on this course. Here we'll learn how to apply the athletic body type to a magical elf. As well as the clothes we draw, we'll need to define the anatomy of this character really well. So, if you're ready, let's get started. To begin, we'll work on a new layer. We'll use the same brush we used in the previous lesson, number 36 with some adjustments. So if you want, check out the properties in the troll lesson. In this lesson, we'll also skip the brainstorming and go straight to the pose we've selected for our character. So quickly start to sketch the main action lines and the boxes for the thorax. Remember that we're working with more human-like anatomy now. Athletic bodies usually reference typical anatomy models much more, so you're probably more familiar with this body type. Sketch the anatomy roughly with basic geometric shapes. Later we can add details, but now is not the time to think about the muscles, but just the blocking. Separate each part of the body into different blocks, like an articulated doll, to observe the perspective and the position. You need to block this way to begin with if you're not entirely sure about the position and the anatomy. It will help you to understand where everything needs to go. A character will be floating, so it doesn't need direct support on the ground, as you've seen. So on a new layer, we'll add some more anatomical details and place the main muscles. Use references to help you, like books or websites about anatomy. This is really important if you don't really know the human body very well. Try to give your drawings a good quality and coherence. References are always a good idea. You don't need to know things off the top of your head. So as you can see, I'm moving the neck and the head a little bit inwards with the lasso tool. If there's an area you want to change the position of, this is a great tool. We're still in the sketching phase, so this is where you can change anything you're not sure about. Hands are always a complicated element. For now, we'll sketch the position of the fingers and the palm, and we'll add the details later. You can even look at your own hands to help you for this. Both the hair and the magic that I'm going to draw coming out of the hands need to look a little bit like fire. So I'm using subtle but also ascending lines. Fire tends to move upwards, so the hair needs to follow the same direction. Then repeat the process with the fireballs in the elf's hands. Lower the opacity of the layer, and on a new one, start working on the costume of the character. As you see, I'm drawing a wizard-like tunic. This tunic will cover most of the anatomy of the character, but we still need to draw it, as there will be areas where the material interacts directly with the body, so we need to highlight the relevant tension lines and creases of the material. If you don't know how to draw clothes, then look at history books, video games, movies, illustrations. This material can help you find really good ideas that you can apply to your drawing. For example, if you don't know how to draw a tunic, search for characters in games or movies that wear one and copy it or use it for inspiration. You'll see that bit by bit, the ideas will come to you by themselves. As I said in previous lessons, the more fantastical elements we add, the more interesting the drawing becomes. A tunic alone might look a little boring for a magical character, so it's never a bad idea to add other materials, textures, weapons, armor. As you see here, I've added big metallic shoulder pads. I'm going to quickly sketch the character's face, playing with the perspective. My character has his head slightly tilted backwards, and we need to consider that when we're drawing the details. Everything depends on how we observe things from the bottom. Look at photos or at your own face to see how the facial anatomy works from different angles. Sometimes making random lines on our clothing can help find strokes that are interesting, to create new materials or details. As long as you do this carefully, otherwise you might ruin your drawing. If you need to, do this on a new layer or a piece of paper to try it out. This trick is also useful for creases. Keep adding more details to the clothes and redefine the volume of the elements. This is a constant cleaning process of the drawing. With this, I mean that we're continuously sketching and defining, on the same layer or on new ones. Take your drawing to the level you think is necessary. Remember, as I explained earlier, each element needs to have its space. You can't fuse elements together, they need to be coherent. For example, if there are materials that overlap each other, we need to explain this with the creases, with the lines that we draw. Now I'll start defining the exact shape of the props and details of the clothes. I need to be precise if I want to explain where the elements are inside the space and what perspective they have, as well as the distance there is between one another. You need to consider all this when you're drawing details. The trick I explained earlier about the random lines to make creases could be really useful at this point. For the arm, where it's a bit complicated, you could make a few lines in the direction of the arm's tension point and then select those you find more interesting, the ones that work better. It's nice to add details like some scrolls to the belt. It just adds to the illustration. This is a magical elf, so any element that helps tell his story is going to be of use. We could also add some potions, bones, books, staffs. Just use your imagination. Now let's define the hands. Use references if you need, like real hands of photos, as hands are quite difficult to draw and sometimes they're key to the viewer deciding if the drawing is good or not. Believe me, if the hands don't work or they're not convincing, we wonder why the whole drawing doesn't work. I'm going to define the facial features a little bit more. I'll place the elements of the face in the relevant places. The eyes need to be at the proper angle as we're looking from below, and the same goes for the nose and the mouth. These elements aren't seen in the same way from the front as the other angles. Remember to flip the drawing horizontally to observe any mistakes you might have made and fix them. This is a good way to understand your own mistakes. You could also use a mirror, as I explained in previous lessons. It helps to see things in a different light, as our eyes can get accustomed to the same view. Also, all the steps I'm telling you don't necessarily have to follow the same order. There are steps that do need a certain order, like the sketching and the later detail, but in general, you'll see that you'll make decisions as you go along, depending on what the drawing needs. It is important to follow your own intuition. Now I'll combine the layer I had and lower the opacity to finally define the drawing. I'll add a cleaner and more precise line, as there are areas that have been left unexplained. Be careful in this phase that the strokes explain the textures and the materials properly of your drawing. Also, add emphasis to the areas you find most interesting. Play around with the strokes to create nice-looking effects. The details I've drawn on the ears are some metal decorations or jewellery that go outside of the ear. They're not a part of it. So to make this clear, I need to define the line properly. If we were to paint the drawing, then the colour would be very helpful, but at the moment the line is all we have. As the material of the hair is fire, the lines I use to draw it will be subtler and light. Each line needs to match the material it's made of. So for thicker and harder elements, you need hard and firm lines and vice versa. Play around with the thickness and the hardness of the line. Select the lines you find most interesting of the creases on the arms we drew earlier. So we'll just keep the ones that really work and look good in the drawing. This trick is very useful when drawing creases in general. We just need to know the tension points of the element and draw the lines in that direction. You can add some small details in this phase, but respecting the main composition you drew before. And now your drawing is finished, so we can arrange it. The first thing we'll do is block the character onto the canvas properly so it has room to breathe. Then we'll take the background we used for our previous drawings and place it on a layer underneath our line. We'll then press Ctrl U to adjust the tone of the line to the darker red, like sanguine. And finally, our drawing is finished and nicely arranged. Now let's arrange the 3 drawings onto one canvas. So create a new document and place it horizontally, dragging the background we used in our drawings before. Then we'll transfer all the characters and arrange them. And see what a lovely result we have when we present all our characters together like this. So on this course we learned how to apply 3 different body types to 3 fantasy characters. I really hope you enjoyed this course and you learned something new. And I hope to see you again soon. Bye!